Okay, so, like, imagine this. You're finally tackling that DIY project you've been putting off, right? Everything's going great, you're feeling super handy, and then bam, you drill straight through a water pipe. Total chaos. Now, times that by about 1,000, and you start to get a picture of what people face after a real disaster. We're not just talking about putting your house back together, we're talking about a whole other level of stress and emotional fallout that most of us just aren't prepared for.
You're totally right. And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
So, for this deep dive, we're digging into an article from CARSI, that's the Cleaning and Restoration Standards International. It's called The Psychology of Disaster, Interacting with Clients in Crisis. And, it's interesting because while it's written for professionals, there's so much everyone can take away from this, especially when it comes to understanding how we react and how to support others during those really tough
It's
times.
like a crash course in the human side of disaster.
Absolutely. And what really struck me was how the article throws out the rule book on what you think a typical reaction should be after a disaster.
Totally.
It's not about putting on a brave face and just getting on with it. It's about acknowledging the emotional roller coaster that comes with a traumatic event.
Exactly. And the article doesn't shy away from that at all. It dives straight into the thick of it, talking about the range of emotions people go through. Shock, denial, anger, grief. But, and this is important, it emphasizes that these emotions don't play out like a neat little checklist.
Right. It's not like you tick off shock and move on to denial. It's way more messy than that.
Way more messy. Think of it like a roller coaster ride, right? You've got your highs and your lows, your loop-the-loops, and those sudden drops that take your breath away. Everyone experiences those emotions in their own unique way, at their own pace.
So, to continue that roller coaster analogy, you're saying that some people might get stuck on a loop of denial while others are catapulted into this, like, free fall of grief.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is how these emotions can manifest in unexpected ways. For example, the article mentions a case where a family insisted on saving a completely waterlogged photo album. I mean, soaked through, the pictures were gone. Logically, it made no sense. But emotionally, it was their way of clinging to normalcy, of holding on to precious memories when everything else felt like it was slipping away.
That makes so much sense, though, right? It's like this powerful reminder that what might seem like an irrational reaction from the outside is often a deeply personal response to trauma.
100%.
And it's not just about the emotional fallout, right? All that stress, it impacts people physically, too.
Oh, absolutely. The article calls these behavioral shifts. Basically, it's like your brain and body get stuck in this state of overdrive. You might experience the classic fight or flight response. Anxiety goes through the roof. Your thoughts are racing. You can't focus on anything. And then on top of that, you've got the physical symptoms. You can't sleep. Your head's pounding. You just feel completely drained.
It's like your whole system is waving a giant red flag saying, hey, something's not right here.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this swirling mix of intense emotions, a brain that feels like it's short-circuiting, a body that's waving the white flag. How do we even begin to navigate this emotional wreckage?
Well, that's where the article's phases of recovery model comes in. It's like a roadmap designed to guide you through the aftermath of a disaster. So the first phase is impact. That's the initial shock, that moment when everything changes in an instant. Then comes inventory. This is where the dust starts to settle, and you begin to take stock of the damage, both physically and emotionally. And this is often when the true weight of the loss really starts to hit home, which can be completely overwhelming.
It's like that moment after a car accident, right? At first you're just in shock, but then you step out of the car, you see the dented metal, the shattered glass, and it hits you. This is real.
Exactly. And that's why understanding these phases is so important. And not just for the person going through it, but for anyone who wants to offer support. It allows us to meet people where they are emotionally, to offer support and understanding instead of judgment or unrealistic expectations.
So let's say someone's in that inventory phase we just talked about. They're picking up the pieces, trying to make sense of everything. What's the best way to support them? I'm guessing a cheerful chin up, it could be worse, isn't really going to cut it.
Yeah, you're probably better off leaving that one in the drafts. And that's where this CARSI article really shines. It gives some really insightful communication strategies that go way beyond those empty platitudes. It's about giving people the tools to navigate these really sensitive conversations with empathy and, actually being helpful.
Okay, lay it on me. What are the secrets to leveling up our support game during a crisis?
Well, the first one might seem obvious, but it's crucial. Active listening. And I don't mean the nodding along while checking your phone kind of listening.
Right, we've all been there.
Totally. Active listening is about creating a safe space where someone can just unpack all those emotions they're carrying around without being judged, without being interrupted, and most importantly, without you trying to fix everything.
So it's about being a sounding board, not a fixer-upper, just letting someone feel heard when their world feels like it's falling apart.
Exactly. And you know what's really cool? When we feel heard, our brains actually release oxytocin. I know that bonding hormone. It's like this little neurological pat on the back, reinforcing that sense of trust and connection, which is so important when someone's feeling vulnerable.
That's amazing. Okay, so active listening is key. What else you got?
The article then dives into providing reassurance. And again, it's about more than just saying everything will be okay.
Yeah, because let's be real, if your house just got flooded, everything will be okay. Probably sounds a little tone deaf.
For sure. In those moments, what people really crave is tangible support. They want something they can hold on to, some sense of control in a situation that feels completely out of control. And that's where clear communication about the recovery process is key. Explain the steps involved, what they can expect realistically, but above all, emphasize that their safety and well-being are the top priorities.
So instead of sugarcoating it or making promises you can't keep, you're giving them a roadmap, even if it's a little messy and unpredictable at times.
Precisely. And this ties directly into the next strategy. Clear and honest communication. Remember those recovery phases?
Yeah, the roller coaster.
Right. So someone in that initial impact phase, they might not be ready for a detailed breakdown of insurance policies or rebuilding timelines.
It's like trying to explain calculus to someone who's just learning their numbers.
Exactly. So meet them where they are, keep your communication simple, stick to the essentials, and be upfront about any limitations or uncertainties. Even if it's tough news, that transparency is crucial for building trust and preventing misunderstandings that can make a stressful situation even worse.
So it's about being a straight shooter, not a smooth talker, because that authenticity builds a more genuine connection. Okay, what's next?
The next strategy the article talks about is a big one: empathy and compassion.
It's a big one, for sure. But it's not like you need a degree in empathy to get it right.
Right.
Exactly.
It's about genuinely stepping into their shoes, acknowledging their pain,
Yeah.
and just validating their experience, even if you can't personally fix it.
And sometimes words just fail us, you know? Like, what do you even say when someone's world has been turned upside down?
You're right. Finding the right words can be tough. The article actually gives some simple but powerful phrases that can make a world of difference. Things like, "This must be incredibly overwhelming for you," or "Tell me what's been the hardest part to process."
And sometimes that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
Just letting someone know that you see their pain, you hear them, and you're not going to try to slap a Band-Aid on it and pretend it's not there.
100%.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most helpful thing you can offer isn't a solution, it's just your presence.
Yeah.
Just being there with them in that moment. And that actually brings us to the final strategy the CARSI article highlights: offering resources and support. This is where knowing your limits can actually be a strength.
Okay, now that's interesting. How does knowing your limits translate into better support?
Because sometimes the best way to help someone is recognizing when they need more than you can give. Being that friend who says, "Hey, I know a great therapist," or "There's this amazing support group. I think it could be really helpful." You're not pretending to have all the answers. You're just connecting them to people who might.
Yeah, like that saying, you don't have to be a therapist to be a good friend, but it helps to know a few. Thinking back on some of my own, well-intentioned but totally clumsy attempts to offer support, it really highlights how important knowledge is in these situations.
It's definitely a learning curve for all of us. But that's what's so great about resources like this CARSI article. It's not about having all the answers. It's about expanding our understanding of what people are going through, especially in those really raw, vulnerable moments after a disaster. And I think what's so inspiring is that CARSI's mission goes beyond just cleaning up the physical mess. They're equipping professionals with the tools to really navigate the emotional landscape as well, which ultimately benefits everyone involved.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right? Disasters don't discriminate, and neither should our empathy and support.
Well said. So as you go about your day, maybe take a moment to think about those phases of recovery we talked about. Think back to a time when you were facing a stressful situation. It doesn't have to be a huge disaster, just something that really shook things up for you. How did your needs change during that time? How did you feel? What kind of support were you looking for? Sometimes reflecting on our own experiences is the best way to learn how to show up for others when they need it most.
Such great advice. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Big thanks to our expert for sharing these incredible insights on navigating the human side of disaster. For more resources and information, be sure to check out the show notes. And as always, thanks for listening.